Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. It is Angie Atkinson, and I'm here with the lovely and talented Dana Morningstar for our usual Tuesday afternoon hangout. Dana, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me.
Always happy to have you.
Yes.
Oh, here I hear myself talking. There we go. All right. Okay. So while we're waiting for everybody to jump into the chat, we will just spill.
Okay.
Today we are talking about a new study that I was reading recently, and basically it suggests that although narcissists perceive themselves as being very intelligent, they may actually be, and we believe that many of them are, they may be less likely to use critical thinking skills when it comes to their own self-reflection, but also they have difficulty thinking beyond a gut instinct when problem solving. This is particularly true for grandiose narcissists, according to, which we would call maybe the overt type, according to this study. And they are, as they are significantly overconfident in their intellectual performance. And according to the study, this is a feeling that was not backed up by their results. So Dana, what are your thoughts about this?
So they're saying that narcissists are more emotionally driven.
Basically, and the idea, and I didn't read all the whole thing for everybody here today, but hello everybody. But the idea is that a lot of narcissists, and I've actually seen this in my own life quite a bit with narcissists, they get an idea in their head and they go, or that gut sensation or whatever, and they go, that's the answer, and then they don't look further for the answer. And this is related to both self-reflection and as well as apparently cognitive ability to problem solve, which kind of in a way can be connected if you think about it. Have you seen that kind of thing in your lifetime, and have you experienced that with narcissists, where they kind of get I always would say they're like a dog with a bone, right? They get this idea in their head and they think this must be correct. This must be the idea. And sometimes, a lot of times it's an opinion, or even a made up fact or a twisted fact, where you kind of, for example, let's just have an example. Mm-hmm. So, your narcissistic mother says you're lazy, you're no good, there's nothing you can ever do to be decent, whatever. And so maybe you become the president and she's still like, you lazy, no good piece of crap, like it's that kind of, and that's a bad example, but the idea being they get an, or they think, the sky's really green. And they really hold on to that. They believe it. They've done some research that tells them that we all perceive blue, but it's really green. And so then they're going to, twist it and tell that. The point I'm making is, yeah. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess from what I've experienced, it's been more of a lack of impulse control. Mm-hmm. Kind of across the board. I think that's been the reoccurring theme with all of the narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths that I've encountered. And every single one of them, there's always been that one moment that's completely shocked me by their behavior, by how reactive they were over seemingly nothing.
Right. But can you connect this to the idea of them having a wrong or incorrect or unformed idea in their head, and even when presented with true facts, still saying, no, my thought is right and your thought is wrong?
Yeah, I feel like that tends to come more from just them having that domination driven mindset where, because you can present them with facts, right? Like, here's a pregnancy test, like showing that you are the father or that you are pregnant, and they'll sit there and they'll deny it to your face.
Exactly.
That kind of stuff, I think, is just more about power and control. And it's a very childlike mindset. Like, they don't want to admit to anything out loud. So until they admit to it, it didn't happen.
Right.
It's like the child that's hiding behind the curtains when you're playing hide and go seek. And they're like, if I can't see you, you can't see me. But you can obviously see their feet underneath the curtains and you know that they're there.
Right.
So it's that kind of a thing. But also narcissism, which, and I guess it would make sense if it was, if they are so reactive and defense driven, because it's thought to be an exaggerated, more locked in fight response. And so when any of us get into that fight response, we're not using the neocortex part of our brain. We're completely in reactive mode, which is the emotional part and the reptilian and limbic system parts of our brain.
Right.
So it would make sense as to why it's a bunch of just bizarre behavior.
Yeah.
That's reactive.
Well, here, absolutely. And one of the things that they said in the study was they did this cognitive reflection test, which was a basic test involving logic questions structured deliberately to trick the reader into making a snap judgment. And the questions were always phrased in a way that seemed to imply a simple answer, but that simple answer is always the wrong answer. So this, and they said this kind of a test can help them figure out whether to go with a gut instinct or whether they're sit with the problem and think about it and then come up with an answer. And apparently narcissists they did this study with, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. They did this study with 100 participants, and the grandiose narcissists tended to be really overconfident in all of their intellectual output. And that didn't seem to be the case, though, for vulnerable narcissists. So what it came down to was that vulnerable narcissists were more likely to enter into that reflection period and think about it before the overt types would. And then it says the grandiose ones wouldn't even go into that process. They were like, the first thing that entered into their mind, they were like, yep, that's the thing, that's it. You know what I'm saying? This is the answer. And then they wouldn't move around that. I found that to be interesting because, like I said, I have experienced things in previous relationships where a narcissist would, including with the parental narcissist in my life, where it would be like, the stove isn't really hot, because I said it isn't hot, but really it's hot. Mm-hmm. And these are lame examples. I can't, but, or whatever, a factual thing. So like I read one time that, if you walk on the grass, you will leave footprints in the grass forever and it will never grow back. Whatever. So this person maybe never walks on the grass, and then somebody does and they flip out and, oh my gosh, now there's going to be footprints in my grass forever. And this is again a lame example, but the point is they get an idea in their head and they decide that's the answer, and there are no possible discussions outside of that. Does that? I think it's really interesting. Anyway, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's when things can get really dangerous, when you get more into that, especially if it becomes more like delusional, where you see a lot of this with like cult leaders or dictators, more extreme. Because I think for them, it's just whatever they truly feel that they define reality. So whatever, it's very immature mindset. It's whatever they think their reality is, then that's what reality is. And it's whatever, and it can change on the fly, and they don't seem to understand, or they don't care, I guess probably more what it is, that other people, that their reality is shifting based on what they say. And other people are like, but wait a minute, just a second ago, you said that this, you said the opposite thing. And to them, that's like, well, that was a second ago. Now this is now, and this is my reality now. And then not only is this my reality now, this is just everybody's reality now, because I said it is, because I said, I'm sorry, therefore you should forgive me. I said I didn't steal that car, therefore I didn't steal it. I said I can fly, therefore I can fly. I said I'm the next coming of Jesus, therefore I'm the next coming of Jesus.
So true. Yeah.
And what's even more wild is the people that are behind them that are like, oh yes, this person can fly, and they are the next coming of Jesus.
You're so right. And that's exactly how the whole narcissism and cult, like narcissist being like a cult thing. I think you were the first one that discussed that concept, at least that I'm aware of. I'm sure someone did, but you're the first one that discussed it with me. And I ended up doing a whole video about it at that point, because we talked about in a live stream once how they are so similar to cults, and it's really the truth.
Well, it's the same type of people. I mean, it's the same personality. You don't get emotionally well-balanced people that lead cults.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's you're somewhere in that cluster B. Mm-hmm. That's leading a cult. Either that or it's untreated mental illness.
Yeah, straight up delusion, maybe. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, very cool. Okay. Let's just jump into the chat and see what everybody has to say here. Lots of great hello to everyone before I jump in here. Jeff Watkins says, yeah, they're like the Queen Grimhilda of Snow White, who is dependent on others to give them their truth. And I think up to a point that's true, but that's not exactly what this particular thing is. But yeah, you're right. Narcissists are always looking for constant validation. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jeff also mentions another great comment here that I think is worth touching on. He says, self-awareness is more than knowing yourself in the mirror. It's knowing your character traits. And I think what's also important there is that, yes, I agree. It's important that we know our character traits, but that we're also motivated to potentially work on any ones that are problematic. So Angie and I were talking before we went live a little bit about this study and the self-awareness of different narcissists and stuff. And I'm sure she sees this too, where people will hold on to any little crumb of hope, thinking, well, this person, I saw this person cry. Or I saw this person apologize, or they seem to have some sort of self-awareness or some sort of remorse or something. And they're holding on to that as proof that this person can change. And I just think it's really important to realize that there are lots of really dangerous, even deadly people out there that can have a tremendous amount of self-awareness and there's still no sincere desire to change. A good example of this is the show Mindhunter. I don't know. Did you ever watch that, Angie?
I have it on my to watch list, but I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, you would love it. You would love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's based on true serial killers. And one of them, so these FBI department goes around interviewing different serial killers because they're working on basically cultivating profiling skills. And one of the serial killers that they interview is a guy by the name of Ed Kemper. And I forget how many people he had viciously, like horrifically off the charts murdered these people. And he has incredible amounts of insight and self-awareness. And even so much, he's very matter of fact about his crimes. He can relate it back to his relationship with his mother. And he has a tremendous amount of insight. He's even shown such a degree of self-awareness that he knows he'll never change. And he has been up for parole just for the hearing, not that he would ever get out really, and he's declined multiple parole attempts because he's like, I am a danger to society. I'm a monster and I should never be set free. So just because somebody has self-awareness doesn't mean that they still have the interest or desire or capacity to change.
That is a very, very valid point, and I'm really glad that you brought it up. And I think that all of us should watch that series because it really does offer that kind of insight that it's shocking that someone could be that self-aware and still be a murderer, if you think about it.
Yeah.
But that's human psychology for you, I guess. That's outrageous. But it is so important because you're right. People look at someone like that and they go, and this is why these people have these fans that write them letters and send them money, these serial killers, because people look at them and they see that and they go, maybe they're not really a monster. Maybe they're being hard on themselves or whatever. Or, oh, look, they have self-awareness, so they must be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, not okay. Okay.
Right.
Good information. Yeah. Yeah, Jeff has a lot of great comments in the chat today, but I want to make sure I touch other people's comments as well, because I'm seeing all these really good ones from Jeff. Happy Camper says, I wasn't always sure if, I think this means husband, but I can't tell. It says wasband. Oh, that's funny. Woo. Couldn't really tell if wasband really lacked insight or was so much or was just a gifted actor. And I think there's obviously that kind of thing happening as well on some level with some people. I've seen narcissists do the thing where they play dumb and that they know what you're saying or what they're under, for me especially, it's like a huge source of frustration because when you're, here I am stumbling over my words, but I literally communicate for a living. I'm pretty good at explaining things to people and putting things out there, especially when it's a personal, person to person thing. And so for this to be, for someone to pretend not to understand what I'm saying to me is, especially when I know that person's capable of understanding and that they're intelligent enough to grasp whatever it is, I think it's a manipulation and a game. And it for me in particular, I'm sure you feel me on this a little bit, Dana, but I mean, I was a journalist before,
Mm-hmm.
like I literally communicate for a living since forever. And so it was very insulting and frustrating to me when I couldn't make a valid point to someone who I knew could understand if they made any effort whatsoever. So there was the actor manipulation thing. But at the same time, there are certain subjects or certain areas that with certain narcissists, you could explain it and they just won't get it because they can't wrap their head around why it's that way. Like, or they might be able to logically understand, okay, so I understand that you feel bad because your friend had this horrible thing happen in her life, but I don't understand why this means you need to drop everything that we're doing over here and go over there and help her because, maybe I'm more important than her to you, so I should be, that kind of thing. So that's a different topic because I think that comes down to they don't understand why you, who is supposed to be their source of supply, who would go over and help someone else when they need you in that moment, when really they don't need you, they just want your attention. I don't know, I'm off topic.
Yeah.
You get the point. Yeah.
Thoughts? Yeah, I agree. A lot of the self-awareness kind of stuff that I've seen has just been flat out manipulation. And like you said, once you see it, you see it.
Yeah.
But to the average, normal, decent person who tends to take people at face value, I mean, until you come across somebody who's just so, got nothing better to do than just continually just create chaos and drama, it's hard to believe that somebody would do such a thing. Like, who has the time and energy to just go out and do all of this? Like, it's just hard for a normal, decent person to imagine that that's a thing. So when you see a normal, or when you see another person crying and they're saying all the right things, we tend to assume like they must be sincere because, my goodness, this person just flew across the country to apologize and they have a dozen roses and they're so persistent. Like, surely they are sincere, but really it's just about power and control.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
And Kim B adds, it can be simple things like decision making, or as far as decision making. Sydney Jeffries, yes, put your question in the chat and we'll try to get to it today. We always try to get to as many as we can, so put them in there. And Dana tends to go I tend to go from the top, and I think, Dana, you kind of just
I go from the bottom.
From the bottom, so we kind of meet in the middle. Yeah, it works out well. All right, do you have another one for us?
Sure. There's quite a few here.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ginny asks, "Hey ladies, I've been wondering why predators like Cosby, Weinstein, and Epstein got away with their despicable actions for so many years and are just now getting outed. Do you have any opinions on this?"
I have an opinion.
Go for it. Yeah.
All right. I think part of that is that for so many years it was accepted by the insiders in the industry. They knew. And this, this is not just in this industry, but I think it was probably especially prevalent in that industry for a number of reasons. But I think it was so many people just that's just how it is. And at some point, somebody was like, no, it doesn't have to be this way. And I think part of this comes from, Marilyn Monroe, who ironically is, anyway, she actually made very little money for most of her films, and made less money than most people that starred next to her, who we don't even remember their names sometimes. You know what I mean? And she was treated pretty poorly by the industry. And of course, she was also probably should have been a Me Too'er were she still around, But the point is that women were considered less than men. I mean, even look, I found this amazing book, and it was written in like 1918 or something like that. And I read the book, maybe even 1906, because I was reading a reprint of it. I read this book and it was just amazing. But a couple of the points in the book, like, men who are reading this, blah, 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 all this good stuff they could do. But then women who are reading this, you can learn this stuff so you can teach it to your sons. I was so offended by that. But that females were considered less than anyway. And I think that sexual harassment in general, it wasn't even called that. It was just an accepted, they also smoked cigarettes in their offices back then. You know what I'm saying? And like doctors smacked their nurses on the butt, and that was acceptable behavior. So I think that's part of it. But I think when it comes back to Hollywood, I think that it's because it was accepted for so long, it was under the radar because it was kind of a big hush hush secret. But then as women became equal, as we, became, which we always were, let me just state that, as society began to recognize that and women began to stand up and say, hey, I don't have to take this. I mean, women just got the right to vote. What was it, like 1920 or something like that? It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up, but yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
Might have even been later than that. But yeah, it's ridiculous if you think about it, how short of a time that really was. It might have been later than 1920. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But the point is, I think part of it was that. And then, of course, I think there was like some kind of a network, and I definitely think, obviously, there was a toxic environment. I don't want to say narcissism, but I think, in the toxic sense, is there somebody else in our chat right now? That was weird. In the toxic sense, I, I think there's more to it. So, Dana, what are your thoughts?
Okay, first off, I just double checked your fact. Yes, 1920 is when women got the right to vote.
Right.
And second, I think a lot of it's kind of been a good old boys network for a long time. But even outside of that, I think whenever there's a power differential of such a degree, when you're talking somebody that has fame, money, power, influence,
the ability to give you what you want, your dreams, etc.,
or take it away.
Yeah. Exactly. Can I say one more thing I forgot to mention? It wasn't just women, it was men too. And I think that's really important to mention. I don't know if anybody said it in the chat yet, but that's really important. Men were being treated the same way. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sure that there definitely was a lot of, just that sexual coercion and
even Terry Crews talked about it. I mean, you've seen Terry Crews, that dude is like 7 feet tall. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I really think it's more about just that power difference than anything else. And it's prevalent wherever you go. I mean, it can be, there was a case here recently against, I forget what fast food chain, where there was huge types of like sexual harassment and like basically rape. I mean, coercion and stuff. And we're talking at like a fast food chain. So that's not even Hollywood where you're talking millions of dollars, but there were a lot of men and women there that felt stuck. That was the job that they had. That's the job that they needed. They were scared to quit. They were scared to say no. And, these things happen. And it's disturbing and terrifying. I think now, thankfully, it's becoming a lot more mainstream, but I'm, as far as talking about this stuff and whistleblowing goes, but I would imagine too, with especially with Bill Cosby, people like that, where, it came across as just this really likable, wholesome, good guy. And I think it was really difficult for people to believe that that could have happened. So, there was that too. And also, I mean, when you're dealing with really scary people, Epstein and Weinstein, I would be concerned that I would disappear if I said something. I mean, you're talking, especially with the Epstein stuff, you're talking child predator, sex trafficking rings. I mean, these aren't, there's a lot if you blow the whistle on that, you would probably need to go into witness relocation, because you're dealing not with just one, but lots and lots of high power people with money and influence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's, I mean, we could go on, we could do a whole episode about that, because there's so much to it. But yeah, good question. Any other thoughts on that before we?
No, I think that's about it. Here got a question from Phyllis, who says, any strategies you can teach children to help arm them against the narcissistic parent and help break the cycle?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've done videos on this, but number one, always teach your children empathy as early as you can start. Make a point of, especially when you have children with a narcissist, but in general, make a point of, asking them, how do other people feel? Like, you can start with something like as simple as like the Blue's Clues or whatever people watch now, because my kids are older. But you can start with something as simple as like, what they're watching on television or with their friends or whatever. What do you think, how do you think so and so felt when they fell down? Or how do you think so and so felt when this person wouldn't be their friend or whatever? Start simple, they felt sad, they felt this, whatever. And then continue to ask questions like that. And then also make sure that, when something happens and you feel sad or you feel angry, allow them to see a certain amount of your emotion. I mean, obviously you don't want to see them crying for weeks and weeks. They don't want to see you crying for weeks and weeks or something like that. But, here's an example. My husband's mother passed away several years ago, but one of the things she told me when she was still alive was that when her husband died, when my husband was 12, she didn't show them her sadness. She would go in the bathroom and cry and close, in the shower so that the kids wouldn't see, because she didn't want them to feel sad. But I think the mistake that she made there was that she didn't, they were like, why isn't she sad? That's our dad. We don't understand. You know what I mean? And so there was this like back and forth issue where she was trying, she had it in her heart to do the right thing, but she didn't. Point is, allow them to see your emotions at least up to a point, not excessively. You don't want to traumatize them too much, but up to a point. But also share with them, how you feel, how other people feel. It's just a matter of getting them to recognize other people's emotions, right? That's number one. Number two, teach them that when someone is rude or disrespectful to them or talks down to them or whatever, they have a right to not react to that person. And when it comes to it being their parent, it's a really gray area, but you teach them not to feel too upset about things and what to do in those cases. So like, let's say they're visiting their other parent who's a narcissist and you're home waiting for them to come home. And let's say, you have a deal set up with them where, if things get too crazy, then, you text me or you call me or whatever. When we're talking about smaller children, there's not a whole lot you could do except for, again, teach empathy and teach them not to react to certain things. Now, if we're talking about physical issues, physical abuse issues, this is a whole other ball of wax. But there's a lot you could, again, I would teach them some version of the gray rock method where you teach them how to not react. And I would teach them empathy, and I would make sure to show my own feelings to them as well. Thoughts, Dana?
Yeah, I think those are all really great points. I guess what I would add to that would just be validating the child. So if they have, a very self-absorbed parent, and the parents, when you have that level of self-absorption, you're going to have some sort of emotional abuse. It just goes part and parcel with that. So I would just validate the child. I would point out good things about them continually. Specifics, oh my goodness, you're basically trying to catch them doing things right. Oh, you did such a great job. You got up on time today, right. Or you did all your homework without me even having to ask, or, oh my goodness, you got you passed your spelling test. I know that was a big deal for you. You're doing such a great job. You're intelligent, you're creative, you're funny, you're a good friend, you're thoughtful, because they're not going to be getting that from a parent who's incredibly self-absorbed. And
good point.
Basically really reiterating to them that, and it's going to depend on the age of the child too, but really reiterating, that they're not difficult to love, that there's a lot of things that are right about them. And if they come to you and they're saying, oh, but you know what, mom or dad, said all of these horrible things to me, and they were calling me names and this, that, and the other, outside of calling Child Protective Services, I would say that the letting them know, okay, that was really hurtful, that I'm sorry that they said something like that. Like, that's definitely not okay. That makes sense that would hurt your feelings. That was a hurtful thing for them to say. Yeah. That shouldn't have happened. And, that there's a lot that's right about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with that one. And validation really is, in my opinion, like when I sat down and I tried to figure it all out back in the day, one of the biggest things that I think I was craving desperately, which led to my adult toxic relationships, was validation. And had I been given, adequate validation by the parental people in my life, then I probably would have not struggled so much with future relationships, because what that does is it gives you a sense of, I'm okay with who, with I'm not a bad person. I'm somebody who deserves to be happy. It gives you a sense of confidence that it's not replaceable. I mean, you can fix it if you realize what happened, but it takes time. And I know that if I had known then what I know now, my life would be a completely different life. But yeah, that was a really, really important thing to bring up. Thank you, Dana. I
Yeah,
like that.
I really, I think that is such a big deal, because for children, when they're around, when they grow up and around an invalidating, let alone abusive, flat out abusive parent,
Yeah.
they are seeing things from that child's perspective. And because children are hardwired to attach to their primary caregiver for survival, like, hey, I need you to like me because I need you to feed and clothe me, and I need that shelter, right?
Yeah.
We're hardwired for that. And so the result of that is children will gloss over things, they'll forgive. They have a very, very, very difficult time realizing that the problem is with their primary caregiver, just neurologically and biologically speaking, because it's against all of our programming. So the result of that, instead of being like, oh gosh, you know what, my mom or my dad is a real selfish jerk, it's easier for the child to think, well, there's nothing wrong with them, there's something wrong with me.
Right.
And they internalize that and they hold that as truth for decades, until they're probably, I would say, in the late 20s, early 30s. And then they start seeing ripples of problems in their life. They go through a divorce, there's something that happens, and then they realize my life's not working.
Mm-hmm.
And then they start realizing the other's low self-esteem, and then they just keep digging and digging and digging. And it's, oh my gosh, I just always thought that the way my parent minimized or invalidated or yelled at me or put me down was just because I was doing stuff wrong. I never realized that that was a reflection of them and not me.
Yeah. Very, very true. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Casey says, what is it called when you realize your narcissistic traits and behavior and you desire to change? I would say you probably had, narcissistic fleas, or you picked up bad habits from a narcissist in your life, which is very common. I've never seen a true narcissist want to change unless they said they did because they were trying to keep you around, or a supply around, or for some other reason. Maybe they were in jail and they had to, prove that they had changed. I mean, or they were, again, in a situation where their source of supply was leaving them or threatening to, and this was their way to hold on. Outside of that, I've seen a lot of, in fact, I can identify with this a little bit, because when I first became an adult and I went out in the world, well, what I grew up seeing was the woman runs the house, the woman chooses all the decor in the house, the woman is the boss of all the things. And so, and she also apparently was supposed to run her husband, and it didn't work out that way for me at all, but that was kind of what I thought I was supposed to be doing. And so I tried to be that way at first, and it didn't work out. So yeah, but that was, so I guess what I would call that is someone who may have been either picked up bad habits, or even maybe something you'd been gaslighted or you'd been projected onto and you believed it, that you had these traits and maybe you really don't. I don't know. Dana, thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree. I think for starters, narcissism, it's a personality trait we all have, and it's on a continuum. And to a certain degree, it's not only not problematic, it's healthy.
Right.
So that a certain level of self-orientation, I'll say, is healthy and it's needed. It's that ability to be like, hey, why not me? Why not now? And I can do this, and I matter, and I have worth as an individual. There's kind of that healthy narcissism, which we would normally call healthy self-esteem. It starts becoming a problem when a person starts veering off into self-absorption. And then it becomes so extreme that it's all about them, and there's no room for anybody else. And then it keeps going to the destruction of other people. But we all have, I would be concerned. I'm more concerned about the person who doesn't think that they have anything to work on within themselves than I am the person that can admit, be like, wow, you know what? Yikes. I just came across this one thing I've been doing for years and I didn't realize it. And I'm horrified. I'm so embarrassed. I can't believe, where did I get this from? Like, this was
Yeah.
so not okay. And they work on it. So if you have that sincere desire, you come across, you're at, because you're going to, I mean, this whole journey through healing, it's a huge, huge journey into self-awareness. And it's like turning over all these different rocks, and you're going to find stuff under them. And I mean, like Angie was saying, she has, Lord knows I have, about my own self. And it can, all we got to do is give ourselves grace and compassion and forgiveness for not knowing what we know now. We didn't know it. We did the best we could at the time. And then to just keep moving forward. But narcissism, when it's at a problematic degree, it's defensive. So when a person gets to that point of, it's all about me, it's not about you, for whatever reason, either they were raised with kind of this imbalanced mindset, or they're defensive. And it's very common when somebody's in pain, or there's some other stuff going on with them, when there's addiction, when there's untreated mental illness, when there's severe emotional pain, depression. People that are struggling with that, they're just not emotionally available to be there to the extent that's ideal for other people.
Right.
And so we all have stuff. I've suffered with major depression my whole life, and there's things that I've done that just make me want to cry even thinking about it. Just being a terrible friend and terrible sister and daughter because I just couldn't function.
And I think a lot of us can relate to that. I know that, at any point when you kind of become, I have become debilitated by emotions. I don't like to focus on, I mean, I've had more than just, I've had depression, of course. I don't know that I've had it to the extreme that you have, but in my earlier years, for sure. Now I have had, I go through just little periods of, no, I can't do this today. I just can't. And I think now I tend to dissociate more than get depressed, which is probably a type of depression, or it could be linked to that. But I tend to just space out and not be able to function. And everyone has something, and here's the thing. Let me just put this out here for Casey. When you look at your faults and you go, these are the things that I'm doing wrong in the world, or these are the things that are wrong with me as a person, even like the things that are physically an issue, whatever. Like, I can look at myself and I'm not going to do it here today with everybody watching, but I would if we had time. What it comes down to is when you can look at yourself and go, yeah, I'm definitely not perfect. I have a lot of flaws. I have a lot of things wrong with me, but I have these things that are good about me too. And I'm trying to fix some of the things that are wrong with me, because let's be honest, some of the things I'm not going to fix them, or I'm not fixing them very fast. And I just have to be okay with that. It's radical self-acceptance, unconditional self-acceptance. It's being like, yeah, I'm flawed for sure, but that's who I am. And it's the same way that you would accept someone else who you loved, like your child or your sister or your brother or whatever, someone who isn't toxic to you, and how, okay, they're flawed, but you still love them anyway. You think it's kind of cute the way they, always have ice cream on their face when they eat ice cream or whatever. And, to give yourself that same kind of grace is especially important. And so what I'm saying is, I'm just turning off my ringtone here. So what I'm saying is, just make sure that you're giving yourself that grace, and that you're not accepting someone else's opinion of what is wrong with you, unless it's a doctor who has a legitimate reason to diagnose you, and even then, sometimes,
it's, I'm a big fan that diagnosis is, especially when we're talking about personality traits, this kind of stuff, diagnosis is only helpful if it can guide the treatment plan. So kind of giving somebody this like life sentence of, oh, you've got this, major thing wrong with you, it's not helpful. And it's been shown that it's counterproductive as far as treatment goes with a lot of different disorders. So I think it's more helpful to look at behavior in terms of behavior, and not focus, because there's a lot of weight that's associated with this the concept of a personality disorder, especially for survivors of abuse, being told, oh, you have borderline personality disorder or antisocial personality disorder. Right. And this is, I could go on and on about this, but it's, it feels like a death sentence for a lot of people. And it probably drives a lot of people to suicide, feeling like they're fundamentally broken, that they really were the problem. Yeah. And so I think it's really important to look at just the traits of that, because a lot of these, I prefer to view them as imbalanced traits. We're going to get this. It's the whole, you lay down with dogs, you get fleas kind of a thing. If we're around a bunch of dysfunction, we're going to have some dysfunctional traits we picked up. But if you're motivated to work on them and you see them, then absolutely, by all means, you can work on them and can get them. And not only can you get them in balance, you can most likely, more than likely, get them more in balance than the average person who doesn't have said disorder.
I think that's true.
Aware of them. Most people, we all have issues. It's just whether or not we're aware of them and if we're motivated to work on them.
Yeah. And absolutely. And on that same spectrum, on that same line of thinking, I think, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, Dana, I think that a lot of times, two things. First of all, I think some psychologists, psychiatrists just want to slap a diagnosis on you for different reasons, unrelated to what's actually wrong. Like maybe medicine, for example, they want to give you some. For example, I went to a doctor to be evaluated to see if I had ADHD, which they said I did. However, they also said that I was some kind of manic, but because they said I was too happy. I was hypomanic. They said I was too happy. I was too happy. That was my diagnosis. And I thought, are you serious? Well, everybody has some problems. Of course I have problems. I told this guy, I'm like, this is, but I choose to look at the positive and try to stay happy. It makes my life better. Well, here's a medicine to stop that. No, thank you. I'm good. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's something to remember, first of all. Secondly, I think a lot of people are misdiagnosed. And again, this is just an opinion. I believe that a lot of survivors probably have signs of PTSD or CPTSD, and doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists don't understand or aren't aware of maybe their situation, or maybe aren't aware of that particular type of, anyway, I think they see the symptoms of that and then they misdiagnose them rather than helping them to work through that. So I could be with some sort of personality disorder. Do you think that's true, Dana, or no?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, especially if you're going to be billing insurance as either, physical mental health or emotional mental health, you need to have some sort of diagnosis code to bill insurance, but also to guide the treatment plan. Because if you haven't done an assessment and figured out, okay, this is what the presenting problem is, then how are you going to treat it? And so the downside to that is you have to put down something if you're going to bill insurance. And which, normally this stuff for clinicians, it's not known necessarily to the patient or to the client, but they might say something like, okay, yes, we're going to put down, generalized anxiety disorder, or, major depressive disorder, or, whatever, borderline personality disorder. And then I just don't think a lot of clinicians realize the weight of that diagnosis and how it can, the psychological impact, negative impact that it can have on a person when they get told these. It's really dropping a bomb. It's like telling somebody that they have cancer. Right. When you're telling somebody that they have borderline personality disorder as a survivor of abuse, or even if that they have PTSD, it just feels like somebody dropped a bomb in your lap. It's devastating. Yeah. And yeah.
I think so, and I think there's another side to this. Maybe I'm wrong. For me, if first of all, I didn't believe that I was too happy. I thought that was a ridiculous thing to say, by the way. But I think that in some cases, an accurate diagnosis or even description of the problem and a possible solution could be empowering. But I think it's how you approach it. And I don't know that labels are necessary, but to just, okay, you're struggling because you were in this toxic relationship, and let's help you work through that. I think from the perspective of someone who helps people work through that, Um, I can say that I don't diagnose anybody ever. That's not what I do. That's not my job. But what I do is I help these people work through their own particular issues that they have as a result of that relationship. But it's really them leading, if that makes sense. Because, you know, if, for example, there were such a thing as me being too happy, then I don't even know why that's a thing. But if that was a thing, then I would not want a pill. And they literally did try to give me a pill to take away the happy. And I wouldn't want that. I would want, this is a self that I chose to develop. But I guess my point is that if you have a problem and you want a solution, then you should be able to get a solution to the problem without a label. If that
Yeah.
label is hurtful to you or stressful to you. But it's from what you're saying. I mean, I can see how it would be. When I was a teenager, my mother had someone diagnose me with bipolar, which is not me. I don't have it. There's nothing wrong with people who have it. I just don't happen to have it. But I think in order to get them to give me medicine to control me, which she did. So I think there's another possible harmful label thing, because a lot of I don't know if I'm too far off topic here, but a lot of the doctors do want to give you medicine, and medicine can be harmful when you don't really need it.
Yeah.
I'm off
Well,
topic,
and,
but
a lot of doctors, it's sort of like, that's their gig. That's what
right,
they do, right?
how they
So
make their money.
that's how they make their money. And that's oftentimes what the patient's looking for. I mean,
Right,
I
that's
know
true.
for me, if I make a doctor's appointment and I leave without a prescription, I'm upset.
Yeah, like
You
what a
know?
waste of time.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
money. Like I don't feel good. Give me something, even if it's prescription cough drops. Just give me some. And that's
right,
that's my own, you know, twisted thinking with medicine. But a lot of people feel that way. They feel like, oh well, this doctor doesn't know what they're talking about because they didn't give me anything, or they don't believe me, or they get upset. And so, I don't know. There's a lot of different elements at play. And I'm also not saying too that different diagnoses for like psychiatric evaluation stuff is wrong. I'm just
right.
saying that there's a balance there between addressing the symptoms and giving up. If a person's motivated to change, encouraging that and moving forward with them through that
Hmm.
process versus
Absolutely.
kind of that whole identity foreclosure of no, you have PTSD and you know have a good rest of your day. I mean, that's just
Right.
like
Yes.
you feel shell shocked
Yes, that's true.
after that diagnosis, and they just oftentimes don't realize how
Yeah.
big of a thing that is.
If I were in that, I think if I were a doctor in that situation, I would always present, if I had to give a diagnosis, I would always do it with solutions attached. Here's how we're going to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that personally, because yeah, I agree. It can feel overwhelming, especially if you aren't familiar with what it all means. Like if you didn't ever hear of borderline personality disorder or whatever, and you were diagnosed that way, then yeah, you might feel like, oh my God, it's a life sentence. Totally
It is,
with you
and
on that.
regardless of what it is, right?
Yeah.
Major depressive disorder, bipolar, schizophrenia, because we all have these ideas, most of which are stereotypes and inaccurate of
Hmm.
what it means to have certain mental health challenges, and it it can just be devastating to
Right.
you know to not have the correct information, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. All right. So Sydney Jeffries says, how do you deal with a narcissist baby daddy who refuses to get help? She's the one we talked to earlier in the chat. Um, Look, you can't force anyone to get help. And so if you're saying baby daddy, so I'm assuming you're not together, in which case I would get, oh, and she did mention vulnerable narcissist. So then we're talking about someone who probably has a lot of tears to say, a lot of crying to do. But I know it's not really tears to say. That's a family joke that shouldn't have even. Anyway, okay, moving on. But really, you can't force anyone to get help. So what you can do is make sure that you document everything that happens. If he doesn't show up for visitation, document it. If he shows up early or he delivers late, whatever, document. If you have a reason that you can prove that he doesn't need to have the child, and if the baby's still being breastfed, or you're afraid that he'll abuse or neglect the child, that of course you have to go through the courts and deal with all of that if you have custody orders in place. But I would say just be very vigilant, be very aware, and speak to the other people around this person. So if he lives with his parents, speak to his mother or father about, helping to make sure the baby's safe and the routines are followed, things like that. But unfortunately, we can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. And that's nearly almost always the case when we're dealing with someone who's actually a narcissist on the toxic end of the spectrum. Dana, thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's such an important acknowledgement that people need to make, and just realizing, what do we have control over and what do we not have control over? There's so much power regardless of what your religious belief is, but the Serenity Prayer, I think, is just so perfectly worded. And just knowing what you have control over, knowing what you don't have control over, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yep.
Is so huge, because we can't, even if somebody says that I really want to change, I want to do better, they have to be the one to take that sustained action and to have that sustained motivation to actually change.
Yep.
So, what you can do on your end is getting very clear about where your boundaries, standards, and deal breakers are with this kind of thing, and really trying to limit any type of destructive influence on you or your child, and document everything.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Do you have another question for us?
Yeah, I think this is also from Sydney, who says, how to co-parent with a narcissist who constantly crosses boundaries, has not helped but wants to, and refuses to get help. Is that the one you just read?
No, but it's very similar to that one.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of answered that right already, but I would add this. I would say again, I would add a reiteration document, but also, again, one thing, if he doesn't show up or doesn't, do the things he's supposed to do, and you can manage without him, let him do it. Let him not show up. Make it easy. That's what I would say. But Dana, I know you have another thought. Go ahead. What were we going to say?
Yeah, I would just say, the distinction, between co-parenting and parallel parenting.
Yes.
Is important. So co-parenting is, hey, we're trying to work as a team towards this common goal. When you have a person that has that mindset of kind of power and control, it's domination driven, they don't have a team oriented mindset. So you can really kind of divide people in this world up into two camps. You've got team oriented people, they're solutions oriented. Hey, let's figure this out. And then you have people that are it's me, 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 me. It's a win-lose situation. And it's constant power struggles of all sizes to win, even if winning means them losing somehow. Mm-hmm. Like they'll rack up $100,000 in lawyer fees and bankrupt themselves just so you don't get a dime. That kind of stuff. Like when a person really has that power over mentality, there is no working as a team with them. And so then the other option is parallel parenting, which means you're doing your parenting and then they're doing their parenting. Ideally, it'll sometimes be able to work to where it's working together, but you're not planning for that.
Right.
So, because when we continue to get upset and frustrated with another person, it's because we're expecting their behavior to be something other than it is.
Right.
So, yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, so if this person has this longstanding pattern of being emotionally and physically and financially or whatever unavailable, expect that.
Yeah.
And be surprised if they do show up, or if you do get a check, or if they, but don't expect it. Just save yourself the stress. Like this is their limitation. This is what they've shown you that they're capable of. This is all that they're capable of. And then now you can focus your energy on doing more damage control with your child.
I agree. Yeah, 100%. And I just want to, I just kind of came across a couple other comments from Sydney in the chat. She says, I don't think it's going to change. And then she says, am I a bad mom for setting my child up for failure by having the narc dad involved? Okay. No, because you're required by law to allow him to be involved. It's a fact. So don't put that on yourself. Just be a good mom, and the rest of it is what it is. Like Dana said, don't count on him. Don't expect him. Do what you can to be a good mom to your child. Be there in all the ways that we talked about,
Yeah.
and just be yourself, and don't put that on yourself. You can't, if he wanted to take you to court and force you to let him see that child, then they would probably do that. So just recognize that as co-parents, as two people who are both biologically connected to that child, both of you have a legal right to the child. Thankfully or otherwise, seem to have a primary role in that child's life. I would say thankfully, given that you don't seem to be a narcissist. So yeah, no, please don't consider yourself a bad mom. We can't change. Like, am I a bad mom because I had children with a narcissist? I don't know. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, no, don't do that to yourself. That's not fair.
You did the best you could with the information you had at the time.
That's right.
And had
100%.
you known different, you would have done different.
Exactly.
And that's all any of us can ever hope to do.
That's right.
You know?
Don't beat yourself up. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're a good mom because you care enough to ask that question.
Yes. Yes. Amen to that. And you're here. Angie and I talk about this all the time. The people, you guys truly are the 1%. There's people that are truly motivated for personal growth and development. You're in the minority. It's 1% of people out there that are actually take time from their day to participate in a chat, to watch these videos. They want that growth. They're putting in the time and energy and effort to deal with this. And this is painful stuff.
It is.
So yeah, I agree with Angie. You're not a bad mom or a bad dad, anybody that's here, because you're here and you're wanting to make your life better. And that's the best gift you can ever give to yourself and to your child.
100%. 100%. Give yourself a pat on the back and recognize that, Sydney. Give yourself a break. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We have a lot of really good comments in the chat today. So regarding the insurance thing we were talking about and that being diagnosed, Sunny Day says, yeah, they diagnose you with something to get paid by insurance. I don't know if you already read that one. E-Rock reiterates that and says, yeah, every diagnosis comes with the condition that connects with the code. We all know that is need for. I used to work in medical billing back in the day. That's true. In my early 20s or whatever. That's true. Heavy abuse can lead to stress that lowers IQ, which is why I make a lot of mistakes and I can't stay focused. Says life is a journey. I mean, I guess physical abuse and emotional abuse, neglect in early childhood especially could potentially lead to that. But I gotta say, focusing on the fact that you're dealing with something that lowered your IQ may in fact be a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm just saying, if you're capable of understanding that this kind of stress can lower your IQ, then I think you're also capable of recognizing that you can sharpen up again if you choose to do that. And I know that sounds a little harsh, but I wouldn't want you to own something like that. I wouldn't want you to own that your IQ has been lowered by your abuse. Whether it's true or false, I would want you to focus on, sharpening up your clearing out the brain fog or whatever it is, if that's an option for you. I mean, traumatic brain injury is it's a different thing. But if you don't have physical injury, certainly, especially if you were affected early in childhood, you can be, your connections might be a little off, but we know that our brains are neuroplastic. We know that we can fix this up to a point. So just don't put yourself in that place of my IQ has been lowered by my abuse. That's all I'm saying. Dana, what do you think about that one?
Yeah, I would say I definitely, after what I went through, I noticed there's been cognitive differences within me. My ability to concentrate is markedly diminished. And there's physical changes that are really frustrating and angering for me. But I will tell you, at this stage in the game, I would happily trade the negative cognitive effects for the positive emotional growth that has only come from what I've been through.
Yeah.
So, and that's, I think, our goal with everything that Angie and I do is it's really to keep everybody moving forward, because there is this place down the road where the pain of this it's still there, but it's not so all consuming. And you can rebuild your life and you can rebuild yourself and make it into something that was even better than before. And
Yeah.
you just have so much more self-awareness and knowledge. And um, there's we can squeeze out a lot of really powerful, good things from this and make it work for our highest and greatest good, because what else is there?
Hmm.
I refuse to let this sink me, you know?
Absolutely. Yes. And I'm with you 100%. And I really do think, I mean, I do think we have focus issues and we have issues with things like that, but that doesn't really lower your IQ. Um, I know that a lot of us are diagnosed with things like ADHD and including myself. But I also, a long time ago, I did a video where I talked about there is a connection. And I think you just kind of, we've covered it before, but there is a connection to those things. And obviously we are affected. But as Dana said, don't, I just don't want anybody to be like owning that stuff. Recognize,
Yeah.
okay, maybe I have a little trouble focusing, but here are some solutions. I'm all about the solution, my friend. And I love the way that you said, Dana, I will not let this take me down, because that's where we all need to be that way. I think it's important. And you can think of yourself as a warrior if it empowers you. I don't like to think of myself as a warrior, because I like to think of myself as flowing into my best self, flowing with
I
the
like that.
the positive. Yeah, it feels better to me. So, but I respect those people who want to think of themselves as warriors, because that's what they need to feel strong in that moment. And don't get me wrong, there are times in my life when I have to pull myself up by the bra straps and go, and go, I'm a badass. I'm tough. I can do this. Whatever. You know what I mean? I have to do that sometimes. And boy, I get really strong when that happens. But and it's in those hard moments, I think, that we can find this strength in ourselves that we had no idea that was there, and we can pull it up and go, I got this. Right? Can you? I mean, I think we can all relate to that up to a point. I will not be broken. I will not. Just like you, I will not. I will.
Yeah.
And I tell myself things like, I can fix anything that comes up. I can manage it. I can handle it. I can deal with it no matter what it is. And I know, because I've proven it for 44 years. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I'm still here. So are all of you, you're still here. You can keep going. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That
Anyway.
was one of the biggest, because I really struggled with embracing that mindset. I really was terrified. I'm like, what will become of me? For the longest time, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. Am I going to have a breakdown, a breakthrough, or am I just going to simply break? Like, I don't know. And really making that declaration of, I am going to take everything that happened to me and use it for my highest and greatest good.
Mhm.
And I'm going to take, and then after that, I'm going to use it for the highest and greatest good of others. And that gave me a direction in which to head. Even though I didn't know how to make that happen, I just realized I couldn't leave my future up to like the roll of the dice of, well,
Yep.
what's my brain going to do? Am I going to break down? Am I going to break through? Well, I guess we'll see. Like I couldn't, that terrified me. And so I really had to set my course. So I gave myself a path to head on. And that's when I began getting busy doing any little thing that was moving me in a positive direction. Smiling, holding the door open for a stranger, sending a card to a friend, organizing my junk drawer, paying my bills,
Yeah.
giving myself a manicure. These little things, that was every little positive thing was a step in a new positive direction.
Yeah. I call it coming back to life, y'all.
Yeah.
That's what I call it.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. Because really, I felt dead in those I felt not
Yeah.
dead, but not alive, and I didn't even know until I was out. And then I was like, here I am. I'm making it. I'm getting through it. And I think you're absolutely right. Set your course and don't, like, we have more control than we realize. And part of that comes from our own perception. Right. And if you perceive yourself as incapable and broken and not smart enough and whatever, not only are you just kind of feeding the monster that the narcissist planted in your head, but you're also tearing yourself down in that process. And like, nobody's perfect, like I said earlier, and there is such a thing as just accepting yourself, flaws and all, being okay with it,
Mhm.
and moving forward how you can. I always say, if you can't control it, don't focus on it. Right. So like, I cannot for the life of me figure out how to get taller for anything, you know, outside of wearing big shoes. I always call them big, tall shoes. And
Yeah.
that doesn't really work as well as I get older. So, I'm just okay with being 5 feet tall now. You know what I'm saying? And I can't change it. So I don't dwell on it. And I don't even notice. This is so funny. I think I'm so tall. I don't even notice until I see myself in pictures with groups of people how ridiculously not tall I actually am.
Yeah. I'm
But
the same way. Yeah.
right. It's just a mindset, I guess. Yeah, you're right around the same height, are you,
Yeah.
Dana? Are you a
Yeah.
couple inches? Yeah. That's great. Anyway, so yeah, it's really true though. Don't focus on the things you can't control. Focus on what you can control. And if you decide to, here's an example. I can't control how tall I am. Probably I can control how wide I am. Okay. But we can, right? But sometimes I just want to eat ice cream,
Mhm.
or whatever. And like right now I'm back in it. I'm back in the phase where I'm trying to get my stuff back together, but
Mhm.
I'm not beating myself up for that few months. I was not trying to get myself back together. I'm
Mhm.
not. It's fine. It happened and it's over. You can't dwell on it. So just control what you can, focus on what you can control. If you need to take a break from something, it's okay, as long as you're still, legal and relatively healthy. Oh, wait, we have a super chat. I didn't even see that till just right now. I
Yeah.
talk so much.
And actually,
Tracy.
I think we had two other ones that I
Oh,
was going to mention and I skipped
okay.
over them. Do you want to work on this question and I'll see if I can find the other two
Yes,
that I
thank you,
saw?
thank you,
Okay.
thank you. Sorry, guys, I didn't even, sorry about that. Okay, Tracy says, I'm thinking of writing a letter, and by the way, thank you for the super chats, we appreciate that. I'm thinking of writing a letter to my ex-stepdad who physically and sexually abused me for 10 years. Yes or no? I'm tired of holding this pain inside. Okay. Tracy, I love the idea of writing the letter I call it. Now, what I would do is if I were you, and what I have done in previous situations in my own life where I needed to get it out of me, is I wrote the letter. I said all the things I needed to say. I told them how they hurt me and all the ways that I was angry and hurt and scarred and damaged. And yeah, I said a lot of cuss words in the letter. I said a lot of things. But when I finished writing the letter, I felt that I didn't need to send the letter because I had already of course, being the nerd that I am, I rewrote it two or three more times because I had to take out all the cuss words and whatever. I edited it long enough and I wrote it by hand, so I had to handwrite the next. Anyway, long story short, by the time I was done with it, I was over it, and I burned it. I burned the letter. And it was very, very, very therapeutic for me. And it really, I felt an immediate sense of relief the first time I did it. And as a result of, and I was like 19 years old the first time I did it. And as a result of that, now, I've modified it a bit, but I share this practice with clients. So yes, Tracy, I think it's a good idea to write the letter. I don't think you have to send the letter unless you feel motivated to do that. But I think writing a letter is a really, really therapeutic, healthy way to go. So I hope that's helpful. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, real quick before I forget, Dawn Elizabeth and Julie Rose Cook both sent super chats.
Okay.
So
Dawn
thank
and
you.
Julie, thank
There
you.
were no questions associated with them. Just
Okay. Dawn, thank you so much, Dawn Elizabeth. She is Dawn is always in my comments, and I just want to say hello and thank you. She's so sweet and so just really a sweet lady. And I see Malta. Malta, I'm so glad you're here, by the way. Malta was my admin for all my live streams where I did day after day after day live streams. Anyway, and who was the other? Julie?
Julie. Mm-hmm.
Julie Rose Cook. Thank you, Julie Rose Cook. We appreciate you very much. All right.
Real quick, but to give my 2 cents on the letter thing, I agree. I would also encourage you, if you're thinking about sending it, what kind of outcome are you hoping for? And playing that scenario through your mind, because my guess is there's a very solid chance it's not going to be the closure that you're seeking. So if he were to actually respond to the letter, it could either be flat out denial. Mm-hmm. He could somehow twist it and blame you, or he could come across as very sincere and apologetic.
Right.
So if you were to get one of those three responses, then thinking about, okay, then how would you respond? My biggest concern would be if he comes across as, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm just a, really troubled person and this, that, and the other. I would just strongly encourage, healthy boundaries at all times. Uh, Manipulators manipulate. And we oftentimes, when they do give an apology like that, it's more about easing their own guilt than it is about acknowledging the harm, the understanding and having the empathy of the true harm that they've done to another person, because they had to do a lot of mental gymnastics to get to the place where they hurt a child.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would write the letter, like, as Dana just stated, all valid. The letter is for you, not for that person.
Yes, well said.
It feels good to write the letter because it does get it out of you, which is why in my case, because again, in my case, I needed to let go of that person. And I said at 19 years old, forgive him. But it really wasn't about forgiveness. It was about releasing him from releasing my need to be stressed out and upset about that situation anymore, or damaged by it. And so, in this case, it was also kind of a sexual abuse situation, but I was not a child when it happened. I guess it was more of a aggravated assault. I don't know what it would have been called had I reported it. I didn't. But it wasn't full on rape, but it was really bad. So anyway, my point is that for me, writing the letter and spending the time to edit it, because I'm a nerd, and it let me sit with the feelings and it let me put the feelings out, and that the letter is for you. I really don't recommend that you mail it at all. I recommend that you burn it, but get it out of your system with the letter. That's what I wanted to clarify. My point was not about, I don't think mailing the letter is necessary. And Dana just explained why. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So do you want to do one more question?
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Yes, I just realized. Yeah,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Do you have one or?
I do.
Okay.
Okay. This is from Vivi, who says, what if I can't control the fact I can't completely go no contact? It's an extended family, and in my Asian culture, we meet once a week or every 2 weeks. I feel numb and shut down and can't sleep.
I'm glad you found that one, because that's exactly the one I was looking at.
Oh.
Okay. So Vivi, I would say this. I would say this is when you need to gray rock that person. So if you're in a large family gathering, be as polite as you can be, but not overly. If you've ever worked in customer service, maybe this will help. When you work in customer service, you have to be polite to everyone that you talk to, even if they're being total jerks to you. But you don't have to absorb the way that they're, absorb the behaviors or there's any insults or anything into yourself. So recognize that this person's disrespectful behavior and toxic behavior is their own limitation. And so then you don't react. They come at you with their drama and their little undercuts and all, little insults that nobody understands but you, or whatever it is in this case, expecting a certain type of reaction. And so when you don't react at all, or you ignore it, or you just look right through them, that's the best thing you can do, because eventually they're going to get bored and realize, well, I'm not getting the supply that I want from Vivi, so I'm going to go ahead and go over here and bother somebody else. That's a possibility. Otherwise, I still personally think, and I know it's a cultural thing and I respect that, but I still personally think that you have the option to go no contact. But I do understand in your culture it's different. So in that case, I would gray rock. Dana, thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree. Like what you were saying, Angie, with the gray rock and really giving limited information. I kind of like to view it as the information that you would give to somebody in an elevator. So it's brief, it's polite, it's vague, it's small talk, and it's easier to then flip the conversation back to them. So if you're like, oh, geez, here comes, Susan again, right? Who's this pot stirrer or whatever,
Right.
And then you're thinking to yourself, okay, I don't want to answer questions about me. I don't want to open up to this person because they're going to use it against me. They're going to tease me about it. They're going to belittle me. They're going to do whatever. So if this person's asking, oh, hey, how is school going for you? Or, or how's your marriage? Or I heard you're buying a new house. Oh yeah, everything's great, nothing terribly exciting. How are you doing? I really like your hair.
Hmm.
Just just it just slips right off you and you just put it right back on them. Most people like to talk about themselves and
Yep,
they might not even notice that you're deflecting like this.
that's true.
And I would just keep as much peace as you possibly can in your life. So if it's a family gathering, you're sitting at a different table. You're um smiling, nodding. You're not letting on that there's going to be drama, because sometimes they'll latch onto that, like, oh, this person's avoiding me, oh, let me go bother them more, right? You're
Yeah,
just kind of, it's brief. You go to the bathroom a handful of times, you're on your phone, you're just kind of polite but disinterested, and then you leave.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. And I really like the tip that you gave about turning it back around them on them as well, because that's a really valid point in any conversation. It doesn't even have to be with just a narcissist, because psychologically, or statistically, they know most people like to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
It's a fact. So yeah, that's anytime you're in a situation where you don't know what to say, you could use that tip. Like if somebody makes you uncomfortable, simply ask them something about themselves, and then, oh, really, that's really interesting. Well, tell me about this other thing about yourself.
Mhm.
And also it makes people like you better too. Just,
Yeah.
you know, good point. Yes. All right. I wish we could stay and talk, because there are so many more questions that I want to get to today, but we will be back next Tuesday over on Dana's channel, Thrive After Abuse, right here on YouTube. She's also at thriveafterabuse.com, and on Twitter is Thrive After Abuse. Facebook, you'll find her everywhere. So make sure that you are subscribed to both of us if you would like to get notifications about our weekly streams. We alternate channels each week. Dana, any final thoughts for everybody today?
That's it. Just take care of yourselves and realize that you matter.
That's right. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for letting us be part of your day and part of your lives. We will see you next week, and I will see you later this week
Okay.
with the video. Thanks, Dana.
Thanks, Angie.
All right.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye.